Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Thank you for joining. This is the community live stream where I, Chuck Tomasi, Senior TPMM from ServiceNow, go through everything I can find in the community and not only provide you with the answers, but the explanations, the discovery, the research that goes on behind those so that you can take that information and bring it to your organization for better problem-solving skills when you have questions or issues with ServiceNow. So, that being said, that's who I am, and that's what we're doing. This is July 12th. Oh my goodness. It is July, no, it's 11th, sorry. Whew. I'm rushing myself. It's July 11th, 2018. I should really check the date before I start press the record button. That is what it is. Hey, I apologize. I had a false start this morning. The audio issue from yesterday seems to be rectified. However, there was a video issue this morning. Whatever I would do on the screen behind me wouldn't register on the broadcast for about 10 or 15 seconds. And I thought, that's not going to work. So a quick reboot of the systems just a few minutes before the start of the show. A little bit of a late start. If you're watching this recorded, you won't notice. If you're watching live, thank you for joining me. It is a wonderful day. Let me see if YouTube has broadcast yet. No, not yet. It's odd because I don't know when it actually starts that. I am subscribed to this channel, and if you do the same, you can subscribe to the YouTube URL you see right there. If you're watching this, just hit the subscribe button, and you'll get notified when the stream starts. Theoretically, I'm not sure I figured out what YouTube's algorithm is. Sometimes it will start just seconds after I start broadcasting. Sometimes it's not until it gets done processing and rendering the script and posts it. So who knows what's going on with YouTube? It's a bit like finding out what Facebook's algorithms are. Never know. That being said, if you do find something in the next hour or so that I am here for, go ahead and click the like button. That way other people will know there is something useful in this information. I try to capture the concepts, the topics that we talked about in the hour, put those in the description so that's a little easier to find. However, if you do have a deeper question, please go to the community and post it there so that others can help. I am here to answer what's in the community. If you ask it directly into the chat, I'd love to say hi if you want to give a shout out. There are a few people watching there. There are a few people also watching on Twitch. But if you've got a question, go to the community, post it in the right forum. Only post it once. There's a whole bunch of typical forum rules that go along with this. Nothing super special about ours except the people. They're the special ones. So I encourage you to do that if you've got a question about ServiceNow. Question, comment, research that you're doing. It's a great place. Lots and lots of smart people. And if you post it there, it's searchable later rather than somebody trying to come through YouTube and scrub it out. All right, I did mention Twitch. We also simulcast this on twitch.tv/NOWCommunity. You can find the URL there. There are a few people that like watching on that channel. That's very cool. Spread the word, share the love. You know what to do. Hit the like button if there is one there. I have to apologize. I'm not the most proficient at Twitch. Also want to encourage you to go over to developer.servicenow.com. Look something like this. We're back to our 1 second latency. Apparently the page is still loading, waiting, processing, waiting. There it is. Develop applications. You can be a wonderful, super duper ServiceNow developer by getting a free personal developer instance, reading the script APIs, joining the meetups, all that kind of stuff that's over there. Free learning plans, walk through, build yourself an application, do integrations, and of course, watch videos like this. Very useful. We also have the YouTube channel for the developer program over at this URL. See if I can hit that. There it is. ServiceNow Dev Program. Apparently my machines are still settling down from the reboot. You know how it has to start a whole bunch of background processes. Sometimes it lets you log in before those are done. I think that's what these machines are doing. There's a bit of latency going on. If you go over to the ServiceNow Dev Program URL, you will find things like Tech Shorts, which is a series of videos that I've done progressing you through a bunch of low-code and no-code options to build an entire application on the ServiceNow platform. There's Live Coding Happy Hour, which is us sitting down, me and Dave Slusher, Andrew Barnes. If you go back into the archives, you'll have Josh Narius, Craig Stepp, a number of ServiceNow developers that like to sit down and try and make ServiceNow do something. We have a requirement. We don't know how we're going to do it. And you get to see the thought process there, much like this, as to how that is actually built out. What design concepts do we use when we're building this solution? What tools do we use? How do we use them? What mistakes do we make so that you don't make the same mistakes? Last week we were building out a REST API over to Todoist. With any luck, we'll continue to build on that. I am really trying to keep my hands off the keyboard on that one because I want to keep building that solution, but yet I want to provide content there as well for you. The other one, let's go back to the screen with the community on it. I think we've covered everything. We went to the developer. Oh, meetups. That's right, meetups. There are developer meetups around the world. You can see there's one in Chennai in August. There's one in London. There's one in, there's one in Auckland, New Zealand. So they're all over the place. If you are near one of those places at those particular times, I encourage you, go to the developer meetup, meet other developers. Let's put that title away. The URL for the whole thing is on the bottom. You can find out more information there. Keep up to date. If you are in an area that doesn't have a developer meetup, certainly reach out to us. We'd love to get one started. I think we're up to 46 chapters around the world and something like over 10,000 members that are part of these groups. So it is a growing community. Consider that this is only 2 years old. That's the crazy part. 2 years ago, we had no developer meetups, and it started slowly with 1, 2, 3, and now up to 46. I expect we'll be at 100 very soon. You never know. There are other ServiceNow developers in your area. You can share ideas, find out what they're working on, find out what you're working on. The agenda is completely up to you. We don't tell you what you need to present. We enable you with material if you want to present material. If you want to do a live coding happy hour kind of thing where you build something, that's fun too. So I think we've got our audience in place. Raul is here. Carolyn's here. There's a number of you that are here that haven't given me a shout out. Good morning to everybody who is watching this. It is time to get on with the community stuff. So I have the community behind me. We have a number of new things that have come in. And I am going to start with, close that tab. I'm going to start with some notes that I made this morning just before the show started to do some follow-ups. One is a scheduled scheduled job to delete incident records. The requirement they had was, hey, can I write a scheduled job to delete resolved incidents after 30 days? And I might have mentioned this. I apologize if this is a repeat from yesterday. It was still in my notes. I did not cross it off. But I said, warning, no, don't delete data. It is going to lead to a world of problems. They already marked this correct, which is why I'm having deja vu. But when you do this show every day, it gets a little crazy. Yes, you can make a scheduled job do that. However, I recommend, apologize for all the scrolling. I said, this sends up red flags. Deleting data is a bad idea in general. I get it if you're coming from on-premise, full stack developer role where people say, we don't need that data 7 years later. And maybe you don't. Let's just delete it. Storage is a premium. We're running out of hard drive space. We're a cloud service. That's what you pay us for. You don't worry about the storage. We do. However, when it comes to performance, you may find that after a certain time, 30 days seems a bit extreme, but after a certain time, you don't need that information anymore. Don't delete it. Because deleting an incident, you may have problems that refer to that incident. You may have change requests that refer to that incident. You may have user records that refer to that incident. You may have SLAs. You'd never know what's pointing to that incident just by saying, hey, let's delete the incident, and gone. Seems like a good idea at the time, but you could be leaving lots of orphan references behind. Instead, make it deactive or look into something like, and I put a link in here, data archiving. That takes it effectively offline, puts it into an archive. It's still accessible, but your reporting will go much quicker if that's your concern. Let's understand what the underlying problem is where somebody says, we want this deleted after 30 days. I would immediately say, why? What's driving this requirement? And find out what the alternatives are to deleting it. The other thing is there's things called Cascade rules. And you know what, I think I'll demonstrate this just to show. I did this on an earlier Tech Now episode. I don't remember which one. But when you set up a reference field, you can set up a cascade rule. So when you may have seen this, when you go to delete a record, it says, hey, this also affects 3 of these other records and 2 of these other records. And you go, oh, okay. So deleting one record may in fact trigger a business rule or a cascade rule that deletes other records. And you're like, whoa, all I was doing is deleting an incident. How come it deleted all this other stuff? Well, that's because it was relying on the incident. You took away the incident. Now it's gone. And those may, in fact, trigger additional cascades. Let me, you know what? This is a great topic to start with a demo. I am going to go to Studio, where I have a dummy application that I've built called CLS for Community Live Stream. Could stand for other things. I think that used to be a command on an old operating system for clearing the screen. Wasn't that a DOS command? CLS? Wow. Okay, I have a demo table. And the demo table, I thought it had a reference field. Doesn't appear to have a reference field. I'm going to create a second table and call this task. Let's do create application file, table, task. I'm going to make a relationship between these two. So let's call this task. Oops, let's spell it correctly, not the Russian way. It doesn't necessarily have to extend the task table. Here, we'll make it even more obvious that it doesn't extend the task table. Rename it to item. So I'm creating a stupid table called item, and it will have the demo record, which is a reference field to my demo table. All right, very easy to do. Let's also give it a name, and just for fun, an active field, which is true or false. It's just habit for me to do this now. Anytime I create a new table, I love having an active field in there in case other things are referencing it. I can just disable it, turn on a reference qualifier, and away it goes. Excuse me. Me. Warm up the vocal cords before I start this. Spent too much time debugging the audio and video problems. Now, what I can do is, now that I've got that table with that reference field to the parent, I can take this reference field, drill into it, go into the dictionary item, the dictionary record for that, and say advanced view. And under the advanced view are a couple of options that I want to take. One is, come on, down here, reference cascade rule. What do you want to do if the parent record disappears? In this case, I'm going to set it to cascade. I'm not going to explain all the options. They are documented very well. And a couple of them appear to do the same thing. Not sure what's going on. What is going to happen? I'll go back to my CLS menu. Cascade is something, it's very useful because, excuse me, I wrote an application about 4 years ago that had a hierarchical, here is an exam. Exams have questions. Questions have answers. And there was this hierarchical dependency. And if I deleted an exam, just for demo purposes, test purposes, I was creating and deleting a lot of things in dev. I set up a business rule that said, well, if you delete the exam, then go through and delete the questions. And if you deleted a question record, go and delete the answers. And it made it very laborious to have these business rules in place when there's already a mechanism in place to do that. So let me go to my CLS app. There's my demo. There's my items. I will create a new demo. I think it just has a record, a simple record. Save that. Put the related list on the form. There's my item to demo. I think I mentioned this once before, a couple of weeks ago, that if you see a single arrow, it says my item record has a reference field to demo. If you don't see any arrow, it is a many-to-many table. Okay, so one is a one-to-many, one is a many-to-many. There's my items. Let's create a couple of new items. Item 1, submit. There's my reference field to demo 1. Item 2, just demonstrating the cascade rule here. Now, if I say delete demo 1. It goes through and it checks and it says, hey, you've got other records that reference this one. Based on that and the Cascade rule, if I didn't have the Cascade rule, it would happily delete this demo record and I would have 2 orphan item records. In fact, we can do that if you want. But this brings up a warning and says you've got related things. Now, if item had dependent things, it would not continue to present this message. It would happily do those. It's saying, look, there are dependencies. It's only a 1 level deep check and a 1 level deep warning. So in my case of exams, questions, and answers, it didn't tell me about the answers, but it did tell me you've got 14 questions on this exam. Do you want to delete this? And it's up to me as the designer. Had I gone in and deleted a question on its own, it would say, yes, you have 4 answers for this question. So you get the idea. It's only 1 level deep, but it does save you a lot of problems. And it also saves you the orphan records. So if I look at the items table here, there's my 2 items. If I delete this demo record and say, yes, I'm really, really sure, I know what I'm doing, this is just demonstration data, I'll delete that. And it also cleaned up my items for me. So Cascade delete rule, Cascade reference is a very helpful thing. Look into it as you design your applications, especially those with related records. If you've got a related list and you're deleting, think about using that. I mean, I'm not endorsing deleting data. This is very handy when it comes to like demo data that you're doing in dev. Let me do that again real quick, and I'll show you. You can also delete this with a script. I'm going to save that record. I don't know why, but I always right-click on the header instead of using the hamburger menu. And I got to get out of that habit because when you're showing a demo, this is the menu. Nobody knows what you're clicking when you just click over here. It's like, if they're watching a video, how did you get that to come up over there? Okay, it gets a little confusing. I'm only going to create one here. But I can also do this via script. If I say, I like to just copy URL, I'm going to bring up my text editor, which has all kinds of extraneous stuff in here. And out of here, I can get the table name. There it is. Extract that. And extract the sysid, and I have everything I need to delete that record. Okay? So let's get started. Var demo equals new glide record. Put that table name in there. Glide record is our API where we interact with the database. So I'm just instantiating a new demo object from the glide record class. Demo.get. I'm not even going to check because I'm so confident that I will get this. I can delete that record. So with these 3 lines, get rid of that. These 3 lines of code, it will not give me a confirmation when I go to scripts, background, paste that in. There it is. And hit run. It's just going to do it. It says, hey, it was granted. That's just a, hey, we've got cross applications. This is the first time you've deleted a record from a script. I'm going to grant you access to that because you're in scope. You did it in scope. The scoped application. This is perfectly legitimate and only appears once. What it did is created an entry in the cross scope privileges table. If I look down on my table, I can see that not that one. It's in a different place. I apologize. But it did, in fact, delete the record. Go back to my CLS table. My demo record is gone, and my items records are gone because that Cascade rule is still in effect. The UI does a little check. It says, hey, should I warn you about anything? Because you're doing this through the UI. Yeah, don't delete records just for the sake of, hey, it's been on the system more than 30 days. What are you going to do with that? Oh, that just seemed all wrong to me. So that is my don't delete records spiel and a little bit about Cascade rules, which is fun. There was another one that came up this morning. I was doing a little bit of homework on the on the community this morning about a get method in a REST call, and somebody was saying, hey, I've got an endpoint to their app. They've got a value that's out there, and the value is search assignment for group XYZ. Now, some systems will be happy with this. They don't care. They will take care of the encoding itself. But what you really need to do is do what we call a URL encode to replace the spaces with %20, replace equals with %3D. These are the hexadecimal ASCII equivalents of those characters, so that it comes out as one contiguous stream. Spaces could be something wrong. I have seen, I don't know when or where it was, in legacy systems early on in the internet, I believe pluses were also acceptable as spaces. I haven't used that, or you haven't seen it. It's not a real common use case. And they said, well, how do I get from this to this? And I said, there is a method, a function available called, I'm going to put this back in my text editor, another window, var host. I would put this together if I were doing this in script. Now, I don't know. I asked them, I said, do you have a script? Do you want to share that script? That's up to them. I would put, oh, they've already got quotes around there for me. Thank you. Or I grabbed them accidentally. I would break this apart into the URL. Maybe some will go as far as saying protocol, then host, then port. It'll get all of this in individual variables. I don't necessarily need that. But what I would do is break it apart into host and var maybe value. Okay, and put those into two different variables. Then, using the method, make another variable, call it encoded, maybe enc. I'm just being very cryptic this morning. Don't follow my bad practices. If you have a standard of better variable names, go for it. Enc is, I can use gs.encode. I always get this backwards. Is it encode URL or is it URL encode? I must look. It is, I brought it up here, URL encode. I don't know why I always get that backwards. Probably because I want to make it read like English, encode the URL. URL encode. And I can put in val here, and just to show that it's working, gs.info encode, enc. Then I can always put the URL back together and use that as my endpoint. Let's run that in scripts background. I have that over here somewhere. My favorites, script background, paste that, and it comes up with, it replaces it with pluses. That was interesting. I just mentioned that. Okay, pluses must still be valid. There is another method of this that I haven't looked at, and I think I have it in my notes. I haven't used this in a while, but glide string util does something very similar, if I recall. So there's two different ways you can do this. Maybe we're going to test, and it says I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, glide string util is not available in scoped applications. That's why. Interesting. All right. Well, there you go. Let's try running it in global. See what happens. Change the scope picker down here to global, run it, and it uses pluses. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, like I said, I haven't seen pluses in a long, long time. If I had other things in here, like is equal to 5, it should change that equals to a %3D, and it does. Okay, so it is capable of doing the, I'll make that a little bigger so you can see it, doing the substitutions to the % notation. Just must be a shortcut. Keeps your URL shorter, saves 2 characters per replacement. So instead of %20, I just have a plus. Cool. And if I remember right, there is a gs.url decode. Let me go out here, search for URL encode. And I have an API for URL encode, and I'll bet right next door to it in the documentation is URL decode. Come on, spin. URL decode. So you could take that encoded string, decode it, and get your original value back. If you needed to do that, maybe you were passing this to another system, or a system's passing it to you, and you need to get those values. Because what happens is you may have encoded information in there. If you ever looked at a ServiceNow URL, you find some of that up here. Let me just copy and paste this out. It's a very simple example. New paste. You can see right here, here's a %2f. %2f is a /. Well, if you put a / in here, like that, it could get confusing. If even crazier, if you said, let's get to sys properties, pull that one up. It's fun to look at URLs once in a while. You'll learn a lot. Okay, I've got nav2.do is the page that helps direct to a page within the page. That's how we get it inside of that frame and keep our navigation menu on there. Without that, and if I were just to go to dev and said sys properties.do, it will come up in its own tab, which the form will do sys properties.do, sys properties _list.do will bring up the list, but I don't have any navigation menu. That's not very friendly. There are times when I do use this. It's very, very useful. I could be working on one record over here, and I could be working out of the standard UI. Okay. And it gives you a little more screen real estate. That being said, if I pass nav2.do, I have to tell it where I want to navigate to. And now all of this stuff in the URI equals, because this is an argument to a parameter to nav2, I'm telling it, here's the page I want to go to, but it's all encoded. So here's a / as we saw in the example above. Here is %3f, which is, if I remember, no, percent 3d is an equal sign. I'm trying to remember. 3f is a question mark. %26 is an ampersand. You'll learn these over time, and if you look at it logically, it kind of makes sense. So I'm going to sys properties, question mark, sysparm fixed query equals. There's other arguments in here, and it needs to encode those so that it doesn't confuse the back half of this URL. I go, wait, you're only allowed one question mark in here. What's another question mark doing over here? That doesn't make sense. Like, no, that one's not for you. That one's for the next guy that processes this thing. So nav2 is going to chop off this part, decode it, and pass it to the next thing and say, here's what you're going to display in the sub window. So that's a little bit about URLs and encoding queries. Thought that would be fun to talk about this morning. Consider it done. If you have more questions, certainly reach out and let me know. That's stuff we can talk about all day. And you know what? That's not the kind of stuff you get in a class. You have to read some books to get that one. Or you watch videos like this and you get that. I don't know where this show is going to go every day. I come up and I get some interesting answers out of here and I go, you know what? That might be fun to talk about. I don't know if anybody talks about that stuff on a regular basis. Let's go to some unreplied stuff, see what we can find. I do have some discussions that are happening. So I might jump to the inbox for a little bit. I did start a little early today. Function get sys time zone is not allowed in scope. And how is it a GS dot something? Because there's usually a get date time. Need some help here. Where did they post this? Performance analytics and reporting. Great place for a developer question. For reporting purposes, we have created a new database view with SNHR core scope to join tables task SLA and HR core case workforce admin. Good. Here is a screenshot of the database view. Yep. The database view is working fine, but when we try to build a report, we get the following error. Function get systime is not allowed in SNHR core. How do I fix this? The question is, do you have a calculated field? Where is, get sys time zone? That's interesting. I'm going to go into the dictionary. Something tells me it's a calculated field. And if it is, that means it's going to be in the dictionary. let's search for anything where calculation contains, what was it? Sys time zone? Get sys time zone. Nothing. Rats. We could, here's another little hint. I'm in Studio, and I can do a search, and it will search beyond the scope of this application. It's going to search many, I'd like to say all, but it's not all, script fields. Get sys time zone. Maybe it's in a business rule somewhere that's run implicitly. SLA calculate NG. Yeah, it's in the SLA calculations, and something is calling this. Task SLA. It's used in a few things. You know, 3 business rules. It's 3 times. Is it in 3 different business rules? It is in 3 different business rules. So that search is very helpful to kind of narrow down where things are. It's used in 4 different script includes. 4 script includes and 3 business rules. Well, that's not very fun. That's how I get that. Someone made a gross oversight, and we need that. Let's go to the API documentation, find out maybe there's a replacement for it. Get sys time zone. I suspect it's a glide date time thing. You know, I didn't even look at the usage of that. Since it's up here, where was it? It's a GS dot. A lot of the GS stuff went to scoped APIs. Glide date time. Let's go to scoped and find time zone. Glide schedule, set time zone, when next, load. Nope. Get time zone name is in glide session. Is it sys time zone? I don't even see any documentation for get sys time zone. And again, I wasn't looking for get sys time zone. Get sys time zone. Not available in scoped. Here we go. Nope. Oop, one done finishing searching. Get sys time zone. You know, I don't like that search as much. Get sys time zone. It may not be documented at all. Who knows? Yep, it's not in here. Great. We have public-facing scripts again that are using APIs that are not documented. So when people run into this, it's a big old problem. How do you fix this? I don't think you can directly. It's built into 4 script includes and 3 business rules that call gs.getSysTimeZone. The development team either needs to make that function available to scoped apps, or create a scoped equivalent and update those 7 files. Here it comes. Put in an enhancement request. They're going to have to do something about that because that is not an uncommon request. I see that as doing a database view to join task SLA to something else. Especially now that more of the out-of-box applications are scoped, that's going to be an increasingly worse problem. All right, good morning to everybody. Thank you for watching. Let's take another one. When ServiceNow initiate conference call using notify feature, does it require that each number should be verified in Twilio? I don't know enough about notifying Twilio to know. I know it's not that complex, but I just haven't gotten into it. Out-of-box schedule jobs, stock rule runner. Let's find out what the question is. Hi, all want to know the flow process of out-of-box scheduled job stock rule runner. If anyone knows about this, kindly share your comment. I think that's not part of facilities, is it? Scheduled jobs. System definition, scheduled jobs, name contains runner. I don't have it. Is it part of facilities? Yeah, it's not out of box if you have to turn on a plugin. Don't see this on my baseline instance. Did you activate any plugins like facilities management to get this? Context. We need context to understand what's going on. All right, had a great time yesterday on the, I almost said live coding happy hour. Tech Now, Chuck's been producing too much content. Had a good time on Tech Now, talking about the script debugger. Hope you found that useful. Hope you enjoyed watching and listening to Stacey Bailey for the first time. Thought she did a wonderful job. We do have a team meeting tomorrow, so we'll do post-mortem. I will get the video and the questions uploaded in the next few days. As soon as I get them, the On24 service that we use will get those to us, and then I will get a process turned around as quickly as possible. Attendance was a little lower than I anticipated, but not surprising. I expect we'll make up for it next month when we talk about London platform features. Look for an announcement about that very, very soon. Instance unavailable. I like to just double check these to make sure it's not something crazy. If it is, in fact, offline, I can always double verify it. Trying to access my personal instance. Seems to be offline. 55060. I get the message service interruption. Instance is unavailable. Could be temporary. Could have gotten stuck doing an upgrade. Yep. Okay. They did post to the instance help, which means either Jack or Brad will come along and fix that up. So they did the proper thing. After upgrading to Kingston, users are no longer able to filter requested items on stage. I think that has to do with the list filter renderer, to be honest. I thought they did something with that. After we upgraded to Kingston Patch 4, users are not able to filter on requested items stage. When stage is selected, no values appears. Has anyone run across this? That's interesting. So this is Jakarta, allows you to do stage is, and Kingston doesn't. Let's find out. Items. We have items in the service catalog. Let's look at service catalog, open records, items. I have a few. There is one that has a stage of waiting for approval. Let's find out. Active is true. You know what? Let's take the active is true part out. Maybe we have more records. We don't. This is a demo instance. I mean, a personal developer instance with demo data on it. But we could still say stage is, I got it. I got a whole bunch. Not seeing that. You might want to reach out to support and find out what's going on. Might be part of the upgrade. Mine didn't start at Jakarta. Not sure what the deal is. Issue is I cannot reproduce it on my Kingston P6 instance. Might be time to reach out to support. All right. It's not an answer, but it is helpful. Get them down the road and go, am I crazy? Is it just me? Is it everybody? Nothing wrong with doing a sanity check in the community. I do it all the time. GitHub to ServiceNow integration. Let's find out with that. I'm going to have to refresh this list pretty soon. Hey, Earl. I haven't seen the newsletter yet, but I know Earl is featured in the newsletter. So you might want to keep your eye out for that. If you're part of the developer program, you'll get the developer newsletter in your email box soon. And there is a nice article about Earl in his Jedi robes. Good morning, City Hall. From Mumbai, we've got India on the line. Looking to integrate GitHub Wiki with the ServiceNow knowledge base. Is this possible? We are currently working on GitHub to manage instructions, and ideally, I would like the instructions to show up in the ServiceNow knowledge base. Please continue. Please, could anyone confirm if this is possible and how I could do this with step-by-step instructions, please, and let me know which plugins I would need. Step-by-step instructions sounds like, not to be a little critical, but it sounds like we're trying to get free professional services out of here. You would have to write it yourself. Okay, short answer, not available, out of box. You would need to write this yourself using a REST API to publish the information from ServiceNow to Git. GitHub. All right, that's where they wanted to go. Currently working on GitHub to manage instructions. Ideally, I would like the instructions to show in the ServiceNow knowledge base. Then it would be a scripted REST API to publish the information from GitHub to ServiceNow. Not a trivial matter, in my opinion. Requires a bit of knowledge about REST and ServiceNow JavaScript. I think Dave and Josh did something similar on Live Coding Happy Hour, but I wasn't available for that episode. It's worth a check. Let's give her the URL to Live Coding Happy Hour. That's going to be on YouTube, ServiceNow Dev Program. And I'll just copy that. There we go. Didn't I give you that URL at the top of the show? I did. Okay, Live Coding Happy Hour. Paste. There could be webhooks involved. There could be OAuth involved. There could be two-factor involved. It could get really, really hairy really fast. I mean, it's not going to be a, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, you're done, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. It's been known to happen. I want to go to my inbox, follow up on some of those conversations that have been happening. I noticed it was incremented up to 5. So we've got about 10 minutes. Let's see what we can do. Get method in REST call. Hafsa replies. This is the URL encoded thing that I was talking about earlier. We have, instead of passing your variables directly to the endpoint, pass them as HTTP query parameters. And then it will automatically encode them as well. So when you go into, I'm going to show this a little bit bigger on my screen rather than the information that's there. When you go into an outbound REST message, let's go outbound REST message, System Web Services, and you create a message. Yahoo Finance is a nice one. There is a REST message, and underneath the REST message, you have methods. Do I want to get something? Do I want to post something? Am I updating? Am I creating? What am I doing? You can have a number of these. Think of them as functions for your REST message. And the parameter here can have, the endpoint is the URL you are hitting. The query parameters are what you're going to put on the URL line. So it's fully constructed. This is going to be http://finance.yahoo.com/d/quotes.csv ? Because it's got query parameters down here. S equals NOW if you want to get the ServiceNow stock. F equals, I don't know, L1? I don't know what that says. It's hard to read with this font. And then I could test it, of course, by putting in variable substitutions. This is in the global scope. I am not in global scope, so I can't edit it, but now I can. And if I put in a symbol for the symbol in my variable substitutions, I can see that S with the test value of NOW, stock market's open, right? Yeah. Yeah, stock market's open, so I should be getting a current one. I hit test, it goes out to Yahoo, it runs the test, and I get unknown host. Oh, did they shut me down? Does that service no longer exist? Yahoo, now I'm curious. Finance REST API. Yahoo Developer Network. Finance API replacement. Has Yahoo Finance web service disappeared? API changed. It was a couple of years ago. I think we need to update our demo record for the the REST API. Mike Moody, good morning to you. I have a question based on what you were talking about earlier. Maybe you answered this already. It seems that the cascade rule of the reference cascade only takes effect if it is used 2 or more reference levels deep. Is this the intended behavior / use? I haven't tested how deep it goes. I thought I used it on 3. I had exams, questions, and answers. And if I deleted the exam, it would tell me there were related questions, but it would also delete the answers. So I haven't tested it more than that. Snehal says, I started ServiceNow 8 months back by watching your live stream day by day. I am learning something new. Really thankful to you. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Okay, used to be finance. Oh, that's a different... You know what? I'm going to look at this later. I'll get some info on what happened to Yahoo and what is the correct URL. Let's go through another one in the inbox. We got a correct answer to that, so I'm going to move on. Stop log in using mid-server accounts. This is an interesting use case. They've got a mid-server or more out there using a login and password to connect to the instance. Mid-server is an applet, a little Java applet that goes on a Windows machine or a Linux machine inside of your organization so that we can do integrations to, say, your SQL server. The instance queues up requests. It does not communicate. You don't have to poke holes in your firewall. Mid-server, you can read up all about it on the documentation, but it's just a little agent that sits on a machine. I've got one running on a Raspberry Pi, just right over there on my workbench, and it communicates back to the instance and says, hey, is there any work for me to do? Is there any work for me to do? Is there any work for me to do? Sending out an HTTP request on port 443, which would technically make an HTTPS request, and when there's something in what we call the ECC queue, it picks that up and executes it, whether it's a REST API or a SQL query or an FTP, whatever you tell the mid-server to do, you're doing it by way of this channel we call the ECC queue, and then it picks that up. They say, well, in order for the mid-server to communicate with the instance, it obviously has to log in and check for work. But there are people that know those credentials. How you handle your security is your own matter. Somebody had to set that up at one point. It then encrypts the password in the config.xml file on the mid-server. But if somebody knows that password, they know the password. They say, I want to stop them from logging into an interactive desktop session that does this. So I had seen there's this checkbox that says web server account only. Doesn't quite work because you can't assign the mid-server role to it. They explained that in there. Said, a user with web service access option cannot be granted the mid-server role. You need the mid-server role to have the mid-server be able to access what they need to do in the ECC queue. And Broadcast says you can try checking the box internal integration, not interrogation. Gives integrations a whole new meaning if you misspell it with interrogation. I believe this will prevent the login as well. No, that doesn't. Never mind, just tried it and got the same error message. You can't do that. I looked at the docs before I posted that one, which is why I subscribed to this discussion. I did hit the subscribe button so that I would get notifications. I want to know how this is done. Another useful advantage of the community is that you can subscribe. If you don't know the answer and you want to learn the answer, this is something I'm interested in, I want to learn more, just subscribe to it and you will get updates as people post things. You may get an answer out of it. You may just get this journey that goes around in circles and nobody ever figures out the answer, but you're part of the discussion, sort of like sitting on the couch and listening to someone else at the party. Do they know what they're talking about? I don't know. I don't have to care, but I might learn something. And if I do have something to contribute, I can always stick my hand up and say, excuse me, I'd like to make a comment on that. Field value is not being displayed in list view. All right, interesting situation. They've got a field on a form on sysuser. There were some pictures in here, if I remember right. Oh, this came up all. Is this a long old one? Or is this a recent one? 3 hours ago. Yeah. Okay, so here's some handy pictures. They've got a field on sysuser that says location, and they calculate this location by using site, building, floor, workstation. And the more fields you populate, the more it populates that location with slashes. They then put it, this is interesting, as visible floor location, blank IRVs, you can see below particular user is caller for the location, shows exact in the list view. When they switch callers in the form, it updates that on the incident form as well. So why? Please find when a user raises an incident how location field displays on the form and on the list view. So how is it on this list and not on that list, but it is on this list? Are they modifying it and it's just going away? I made a comment down here and I said, can you help me understand a few things? How is that field being populated on the user form? Is it a calculated field? How is it being put on the incident form? Did you dot walk to place that on there? In which case it will represent a view of that field value from the user table, but it won't update dynamically like it would if it were done with a client script. If you did it with a Glide Ajax and said, I'm changing the user, go change the location. Does that save it? Or I need to know more about how this is managed and maintained. Do you understand what scripts are involved, what fields are involved, what calculations are involved, how this is being placed on that form, and how is it being placed on the list? Is it being dot walked from there? Because it may be that it is simply showing something on the incident form, but not saving it with the incident record, or not saving it with the user record. It might be calculated in real time and hasn't been saved yet. Yes, the field is being populated on the user form. With the location field, we have a calculated value. Here is the below script. Okay, and then floor is floor full name, building is full name, location is full name. I don't think location has a full name field, but we'll never mind that. All right. Is it all records or just some records? Because your screenshot, is this happening for all records or just some records? Your incident list was a bit confusing. Incident list shows both cases. More questions. I never really get to the answers. I just ask more questions. Which is how a good discussion should go when you get requirements. You did mean 3 tables, aka 2 reference levels deep. Thanks for confirming. Yeah, if you can't confirm that, let me know. I mean, I could do a real quick example here. I did one at the top of the show. But you know what? Let's get through the email, and I'll give you an extra bonus few minutes because I did start a few minutes late. How's that for a deal? We'll go verify that. I'll do 3 tables, so it's 2 references deep. Question was about the logic behind barcode scanning. They wanted 2 things. They said, 1, can the barcode scanner on the mobile app put some sort of border around what's being scanned? I've seen this with like QR codes. It will show this kind of shaded window and it says, aim your barcode in this box and I'll get it. Our mobile app doesn't have that at this point. I think the entire camera is the barcode scanner. And they also said, when I get something from the barcode, I'm getting S and then serial number. It didn't make sense. And I said, well, does that happen if you scan it with another app or device? If I load up something on my phone, apart from the ServiceNow mobile app, maybe it's just a QR code reader, and I scan a barcode, do I get that same craziness? That would mean it's part of the barcode and there's nothing we can do about that. If it's giving me just the straight serial number back from that, it would mean it's part of the ServiceNow app. So for number 1, this is something that cannot be achieved. The platform builds. This is something that I said, number 1, we can't do anything about the way the camera reads without modifying the application in some way. If you want to do that, you put in an enhancement request. Number 2, yes, there have been scans earlier which were successful. I believe that's the reason why this one is concerning highlighted while using the ServiceNow mobile app scanner, though I will get more details around this and let you know. Thank you. Thank you. And Rochelle had a question about a catalog item with a dependent field. She's got like a category and a subcategory. I forgot what the actual names were. And I said, you can do this, but you have to build it yourself. You put an on-change script on the first one that manages the values and options on the second one. I documented something very similar to this in Tech Now episode 33 and linked it to there. I said, go check it out. The secret is to pass this information back and forth with JSON. Thanks for joining, Chris. Good to talk to you. Mike, you've already tested it? I'm good. Thanks. All right, that takes us to the top of the hour. I want to thank everybody for joining today. Apologize for the late start, but we do have solid audio and solid video, which is very important if we're doing demonstrations like we did today. It would really have hurt me if I started doing a demonstration and it didn't show up on the screen until 15 seconds later. It's hard to narrate while you're talking. Right now, I've got about a 1 second latency, and I'm willing to live with that. Thank you again. If you learned something today, go out and share it with others, and you will be a big help. I encourage you to do that at every opportunity, whether it is technical, ServiceNow, anything else related. It's your hobby. It's your life. It's a great way to gain connections with other people and make the world a better place. So until tomorrow, take care and bye.